Self-worth was measured by how well I fit in, how much people liked me, how popular that I was. And when I lost it, of course I cried, of course I was devastated, of course I was pretty sad because I chose to hang out with one person over another because of what I felt about myself. Because as long as I am making my creator happy, as long as God is happy with me, as long as I'm following his laws, as long as me and him are good, then I don't really have to try to impress everyone else. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future, so everything is working for my good. The first time I realized that I wanted to fit in was when I got to middle school. I have curly hair. Obviously, Rihanna had this thing where she shaved both the sides of her head. You know, people were actually coming into school with a mohawk, and their parents shaved their hair off. And then my mom didn't let me do any of those. That was the first instant of time where I wanted to fit in, where my self-worth was measured by how well I fit in, how much people liked me, how popular that I was. When I was 16, I sort of hit this really, really low point in my life where I wasn't the happiest. And so during that time period was when I started my prayer life. My whole perspective changed. I remember walking back into school the year before, a little bit depressed, stayed to myself for the most part, and I came to school the next semester. The thought process after I started my prayer life was, I don't care what other people think of me, I'm not gonna try to fit in, as long as I am making my creator happy, as long as God is happy with me, as long as I'm following his laws, as long as me and him are good, then I don't really have to try to impress everyone else. So in this book, Jamie defines two differences that makes up our self-worth. So your self-esteem, external factors like achievements, awards, people that give you compliments. And as a result of achievements, as a result of compliments, as a result of these external factors, we tend to feel good about ourselves. And your self-worth stays the same regardless of if your boyfriend chooses to marry you or if he breaks up with you, whether you get an A on your test or you fail your test. It's not something that changes based on what's happening in the outside world. It's sort of just a constant thing. We're going to talk about 3 things that I've been doing that have transformed my life in terms of building my self-worth, building my self-esteem. And so one of the examples actually is, how many of us have been in classrooms where the teacher asks a question, you know the answer, but you're too shy to raise your hand, or just because you're scared or afraid, or you care what your teacher thinks of you, think your question is silly. So because of that, you choose to dim your light, you choose to not raise your hand to answer the question. And so that's part of why this video is today, because dimming your light, that simple example of choosing to raise your hand and not raise your hand, is the difference between starting a YouTube channel and not starting a YouTube channel because you don't feel good enough or worthy enough, or, you know, speaking up in a work meeting because you don't feel like what you have to say matters. It just trickles into everything. One of the things that have helped me truly in building my self-worth comes from The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. This book has sold over 40 million copies worldwide and translated into over 50 different languages. And so this is a high-profile book about the idea of affirmation. One of the affirmations that I use for myself every single morning is Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11, which says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope." Saying this affirmation a year or 2 afterwards, something that happened was me losing my job. And when I lost it, of course I cried, of course I was devastated, of course I was pretty sad because this was my first job out of college. And then I used to think to myself, okay, so I don't have plans to harm you, only to give you hope and a future, and he wants me to be prosperous, and he's not trying to harm me from whatever this thing is. So I always think about the bad things that are happening, quotation on bad, as a setback for a comeback. Recently in my job, I was working on this case for a client of mine. I messed up and I submitted the case for a different client. And so when I did that, I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck? Like, I should have checked my work thoroughly, should have done this, I should have done that. Okay, so this thing that I did wasn't really a bad thing, I just need to learn from it. There was a process that I figured out that helps me check my work more thoroughly and more effectively. And I ended up sharing that process with my team, and my boss actually were like applauding me for this thing that I discovered. They were like, wow, that's so outside the box. We're gonna add this to your processes. And all of this came from this one mistake that I made where I submitted work to the whole for a different client. And so I have this affirmation that I read to myself every single morning, and I remind myself that anything bad that happens, or anything negative, or anything that isn't ideal, is working out for the greater good. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. So everything is working for my good. He even talks about affirmations as scripts that you are rewriting in yourself. You can be someone like me who is afraid of bad things happening, and you can read Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 to yourself daily. And the second tip that I'm going to share with you comes at building our self-esteem. Identity votes. And the best example that I could give of this right now is the fact that I showed up today where I'm looking at the camera and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't feel as cute as I usually do. I don't feel like making this YouTube video. I don't feel like recording. I don't feel like talking right now in front of this camera. But regardless, I promised myself that I was going to show up. I promised myself that I was going to upload a video every single week, and regardless of if I felt good about it or not. So I'm just going to show up for myself. One of the identities of myself that I take pride in is consistency. So showing up to me is half the battle to anything that I want to achieve in life. So this tip from the book Atomic Habits, which has been translated into over 50 different languages and sold 15 million copies worldwide. So in this book, the author talks about the idea of identity vote. For example, say that you're working on being a writer and that's the identity that you want to have. If you show up every day, even when you don't feel like it, and write a sentence or a paragraph, every time you're doing the thing that you said that you're going to do, whether that's writing, or you tell yourself that you're an athlete, so you go to the gym every single day, whether that's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, if you're doing these things consistently, you're sort of voting for the identity that you are. Don't feel like recording this video, but I'm showing up and I'm doing it anyways. So the best way to summarize everything that I've been talking about so far is through this quote that says, watch your thoughts because your thoughts become words. Watch your words because your words become your actions. Watch your actions because your actions become your habits. Watch your habits because your habits form your identity. And then watch your identity because your identity becomes your character. And then watch your character because your character determines your destiny and where you end up in life. And so the words that you choose to say to yourself, along with the identity that you are choosing every single day by deciding to do something or not do something, ultimately determine where you end up in life. That determines your destiny. And the last tip that I'm going to talk about today is showing up even when you don't feel good enough. The best way that I can explain this is when I was in college, I took this math analysis course and I was doing well. I took the first exam and I got an A on it. And then there were smart kids in the corner, and then there were kids that were struggling. And I was so embarrassed at hanging out with the smart kids because I didn't want them to know that I was figuring life out. Even I was so worried about what they thought about me. I decided to hang out with the kid that was actually failing the class. She got like a D or a C on the first exam. And I don't say this to hate or anything like that, but that's like worthiness. That's because of what I thought of my self-worth. I didn't feel good enough. So I was like, okay, let me hang out with this kid that's failing the class because I'm too embarrassed to ever look like I don't know something in front of the kids that I know are acing this class. So I ended up hanging out with her. I ended up studying with her. And every time we talked, it surrounded fear. It surrounded, oh my gosh, like I don't know what the next exam is gonna be like. It surrounded, oh my gosh, I've been not doing that great on the homework. So even the talks were different. And so the next exam came around and my grades slowly started dropping. I think I got a C or something on the next exam. And then I ended up completely bombing the next exam and I got a C as my final grade in the class. If I had spent more time with the kids that were acing the class and sitting in the front of the classroom raising their hand, the conversations that we had would not have been surrounding fear. It would have been about sharing great resources. It would have been about acing the class. And I bet that I would have at least gotten a B or something in the class. I chose to hang out with one person over another because of what I felt about myself, because I didn't feel like I was smart enough. So I hope that you took away at least one thing from this video. And until next week, I will see y'all later. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you enjoyed it, please share with someone too.